My name is Connie Palacioz. When the Jets bombed at Pearl Harbor, I was in school, and I remember that we were moving from the section houses, because my dad used to work for the railroad, and we live in the section houses. But we had a priest that lived about 2 blocks from the section houses in a home, and he needed a housekeeper. So my mother was going to be the housekeeper. So then we moved to the house where the priest used to live. And we were just moving there when we heard the news about Pearl Harbor. That's when we, of course, you know, we were all sad and everything, because we lost a lot of people there in Pearl Harbor. So I heard it on the radio, because we didn't have TVs. So that's when most of the news were on the radio that we used to hear. Oh, the section house was the railroad Santa Fe had well, there were like 10 homes, and we had 3. And there's where the laborers, the Santa Fe let us live there free. And my dad, he couldn't read or write, but he spoke English fluently, because when he came from Mexico, they settled in Waco, Texas. And my dad used to play with the little kids. They weren't Mexicans. They were his age. And he learned his English by playing with those little white boys and girls. So he was very good at English. So the Santa Fe put a telephone where we lived, so whenever the snow and everything, they would call my dad, and then my dad had to go and get all the laborers to go out and shovel the snow so the trains could get by. When I was going to high school here, I could not belong to the cheerleaders. I could not belong to anything, because they didn't want Mexicans to belong to it. And I had a real bad experience at Newton High. That's why I wasn't, I didn't like our superintendent then, because we had a Mexican boy, Manuel Martinez. He was in the same grade I was, and he was dating a white girl, Margie was her name. And one day, her mother was changing her bed, and she found letters from Manuel. And she went to the principal and told him that she didn't like that, and they wanted to expel Manuel. But instead of expelling him, they called me in, and they wanted me to take Manuel away from Margie. I said, I can't do that. And they really treated me bad. In fact, 3 times they lost my test papers, because they said I never handed them in, and I had. But they made me take them in the office over, just because I wouldn't do that. So there was a lot of discrimination that I went through in Newton High. That's why I wasn't in any of the activities, or I just went. In fact, I would have quit, but I had Theodora Groves. She was one of my teachers, and she told me, don't quit, keep fighting, but don't say anything that I advise you, because I can get fired. So, but she gave me a lot of support, and if it hadn't been for her, I don't think I would have graduated. So that, I don't know why they had a lot of discrimination there too. Yeah, some even left before they graduated. They volunteered. Some volunteered, and others were waiting until they got drafted. The mothers, they were all sad because their boys were going, and well, we were too, because we used to hear about how many lives we lost and everything. Yeah. And so we lost a few from Newton that we knew. I worked at a cleaners. That was another thing. I was ironing the Navy uniforms, white uniforms for the Hutchinson Naval Base they had. And that's when I started working there at the at the new process laundry. They used to pay us 25 cents an hour. And one day, Linda, she was my helper. She pressed uniforms with me. And one day, Linda and I, we got an idea that we were going to ask for a raise, 50 cents. And the other girls didn't want to go with us because I guess they didn't want to lose their job. So Linda and I, we wrote a note and we put it underneath the office on the end of the day. The next day when we got in, and Mrs. Houston was her name, she called us all in and said, "Who wrote that note?" So the other girls, we didn't know nothing about it. So then Linda looked at me and I looked at her, and so we both stepped out and said, "We did." So she dismissed them. And she left us there and she said, "Well, I'm not going to give you a raise because these girls, they're not asking. It's just you two. So, but you better hurry because those Navy uniforms." Well, I said, okay. We went back, and then Linda and I talked and said, we're not going to work too hard. We were going to take our time. So we worked really slow, and those Navy uniforms kept piling and piling. And then finally, Miss Houston come over and said, "Girls, you better hurry. We're only worth 25 cents an hour." And finally she came and said, "I'll give you the raise, but get those uniforms out of the way." So we had to work so hard, but we got our raise. But then I think it was 3 weeks after that is when I heard that Boeing wanted, and that's when I quit the laundry to go to the Boeing. I heard on the radio that they needed workers to go to the Boeing in Wichita because of the war, and I wanted to do the war effort at the time, so I went to Wichita and applied, and they sent me to a school first at I used to ride a bus from Newton to Wichita, and they would drop us at the Orpheum Theater, and we would walk to a building right next to the Broadview Hotel. And there they were giving classes for riveters and drillers and whatever we wanted to do. Well, my instructor said that they really needed riveters, so I said, well, I'll try that. And I was there for 2 weeks. And then after the 2 weeks, my instructor said, I think you're ready to go to the plant. So then I went to the plant. I used to ride the bus from Newton. They had a bus that would take about 36 of us, take us to the plant. The ones that used to be able to get gas were the bus drivers. And then if you work and you drove your car, you can get gas too. We would go to the plant. We work our 12 hours, and then the bus driver used to work at Boeing. And John Davis was his name. And so he would wait for us, because he worked there too. It took us about, I would say, 35 to 40 minutes, because sometimes we had to stop and pick up people. The first day that I got to Boeing, I was kind of a little disappointed because I didn't get to rivet, because they told me that they didn't have a bucker. Because when you need a bucker for a riveter. You put the rivet in with the gun, and then on the back of the plane, they have a steel bar that they put on the rivet. The bucker holds it, so when the gun hits it, it has to flatten the rivet. They all have to be the same size, and on the outside, it has to be level. And on the back, the bucker has to have a really, about that much from the. So I didn't have a bucker. Then on the second day, they told me that there was a bucker, but that nobody wanted to help. Nobody wanted to work with her, and they had her picking up trash and all that. And I said, but is she a bucker? Yes, she is, but she was black. I said, oh, I don't mind working with her. I'm a Mexican American too, so I don't mind working with her. So they brought Jerry, and she was the best bucker. Her and I became really a good team. I couldn't have rivet if I hadn't had her. She was good. So we stayed together until the war, well, we got laid off after the War II. I went in May of 1943, and we got laid off in August of 45, right after the war. I think I built quite a few, because sometimes sometimes when we would get there in the morning, they hadn't passed the others, because, you know, you have to really have the rivets and the inspectors. If they don't pass the plane, then they had to take the rivets out, and then we had to put, a lot of times Jerry and I, we had to replace some of the nose sections, because that's all I work in, the nose sections that we had to replace because they weren't done right. Get a drill, and right in the middle of the rivet, you drill it, and then you take it. Jerry and I, we could do 2 a day. We worked 12 hours, and we could finish about 2 a day. We were really fast. Her and I were really, in fact, in the department where I worked, 330, we were the best riveters in that section, and we did more pilot sections as any others would, because some would have to, you know, if they had any bad rivets, they had to drill them out and everything. Usually we did. We had a good chance that, I mean, she did such a good job bucking that it was easy for me to rivet. And then, if there was there were some places there where we didn't have a bar. There used to be a gentleman by the name of Frank Chacon, and he would make any bars, any size or shape you wanted, and Jerry could just draw in a paper and take it to him, and he would make a bar that she could get into those real tight spaces between the plane and the frame. There in Boeing, yeah, we build, but there were some that were built in Seattle and others in Memphis, Tennessee too. But I just worked there on the ones at the Boeing. And when we built the 1,000, we had a big celebration, and we all put dollar bills on the plane, and we gave it to charity. And that was a big celebration for us when we made the 1,000. I have been in them, but I haven't flown, but I've been in the tunnel. I can, because I'm small enough, and a lot of times I was called to go into the tunnel and help rivet in the tunnel. You know, you couldn't run around all over because you had your badges, and you can be going to the wings and everything. During the lunch hour, half an hour, once in a while I would go to the department next to me, which they were building the wings. But then, that plane was so big, and you know, that we didn't have time to go. And then when the ship was over, we were ready to get on that bus because we didn't want to miss the bus. Had a break, 15-minute break, in the morning and in the afternoon. Well, no, we could stop if it was in, you know, we really had to go. But I have a good bladder. I didn't have to go. Well, they notified us that, there at the plant, and then they dismissed us to celebrate. Doc was in the desert for 42 years. They use it for target practice, but they never touched the nose section. They just touched the other parts. So when they brought in the B-29, they brought the nose section in one piece. And that nose section is the one that I put the rivets. The original rivets are still there. So that's why I'm so glad that I can be there restoring it, because those are my rivets.
This is truly a chance, you all, for us to celebrate and officially put Doc's Friends mission into action. Our mission is to honor the men and women who built, flew, and supported this great warbird and did what they did to secure our freedom. It's to educate current and future generations. It's to connect us and people in our community with our rich aviation heritage. So that's the mission of Doc's Friends.
Very close to the finish line. And I'm sure that we'll all be very happy to see the engines turn for the first time and to see it take first flight. And why we're doing this is for the reasons that Jeff mentioned. Yes, I was in the Air Force and I had a love affair with this airplane, but I want to do it in honor of those veterans and in honor of those people on the home front who helped build these airplanes and the arsenal of democracy. And I'm doing it for another reason. We want to keep the memories alive of that time period.
It could not have been done without the efforts of everybody. You guys have done a great job. We've still got a little ways to go, but we're going to get there. So you guys deserve the round of applause.
For me, today is truly an honor. From a pilot and an airman, just looking at this amazing aircraft, it gives me goosebumps. Today is actually the first day I've got to see it, and it is absolutely incredible. So thank you again to all the volunteers, to your board, and everyone that took part in bringing this back, because this is a treasure, and it's an amazing sight to see. So thank you very much.
One thing that I haven't mentioned, that the reason how we got the name of Rosie the Riveter, because Japan had a Tokyo Rose, and she would come on the radio, and she would try to break the morale of the boys. They were at war. And then a lady that was, I think she was working in Seattle, she's the one that got the idea for us to be Rosie the Riveter so we could get back to Tokyo Rose. And that's how we got our name. Well, in Oshkosh, what I did was I signed a lot of autographs. And because I have a poster of Rosie the Riveter, and the donation was $5 for when I signed them. And when I was in Boy Scout, I signed 5,900 posters. Went to Doc's friends, because we needed the money. And I still have some posters that I go and I still get $5. It's a donation. And of course, there in Oshkosh, I had one gentleman that put $100 bill. I said, oh, do I have to sign all those? He said, no, just one, but that's a donation. So we have sometimes that will probably some will give us $10, $20 and let us keep the money. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are my B-29 earrings. We were happy that we were doing those planes, because those are the ones that threw the atomic bomb in Japan, and we had a lot of planes were lost. Young kids should know what the sacrifices and everything that we went through during the war.